He's definitely brutal. He's always savage, and you're definitely getting wrecked.
By the way, as you alluded to, when the Quake Pro League was going and had begun, obviously when they had that LAN where famously you played Cooler in the final, and this was one of the rare times in Quake Champions where Cooler looked really fucking good. Like, I remember watching this final, mate. I'm like a massive Cooler stan, but here's the thing, I can admit when he wasn't the best player. Like, Cypher used to be better than him in Quake Live, Rapha used to beat him, and the thing about Cooler, if people don't know, is because he's played for so long, obviously his motivation comes in waves. Like, he's not grinding like he used 15, he's super old in the game. Dude, this actual LAN, I don't even blame you for this loss, mate. I said the same thing to Kilson who played him. Like, he looked unbeatable at this LAN. Like, he actually was just bonkers. Do you think so?
I can't really remember how it went down. I know I lost very one-sidedly, and I remember feeling desperate. Like, no matter what I tried, he just countered it perfectly. Whenever I tried to make a certain move, he just did exactly the right thing to make me lose that situation and not make the move worth doing and all that. So yeah, during that final, it did feel like as if he's just unbeatable.
I mean, his mechanics even were pretty bonkers in that one, right? He was like hitting every shot. I remember he was mad aggressive, like he was just running up the score, wasn't he?
I can't really remember. It's been a while.
It's all good. Delete that one from your memory anyway.
I'd like to forget.
Yeah, delete that one. You don't need to remember that one. It's all good.
But yeah, I remember he played really well, and you wouldn't really expect it necessarily, even though he is Cooler. We are talking about. Still, that was his like, I would say like,
Renaissance or whatever. It was like a comeback, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was like a, what's the right word? Like he was popping off. I can't use the right word. He had some nice results as well, like in other tournaments, like PGL in 2018, I think. He became second. In 2019 QuakeCon, he became second after Kilson. So like he had good results.
Yeah.
But like you said, that was the event he won, and he won it very one-sidedly. But on the grind part, he didn't play the game much up until there was a big event, and then all of a sudden he was playing 24/7.
Right.
But the way he played, he felt like I was sometimes watching him stream because he was streaming it. He was playing like 10 hours a day for like 2 weeks straight every day, but it felt like he was, we called it sandbagging. I'm not sure if it's the right word, but like he wasn't really trying throughout those practice
sessions.
He was just he was just like grinding, but somehow all that grind, even if it felt half-assed, paid off in the long run. And all of a sudden, when it comes to the event, he is like in a new shape, like tiers above what the practice was shown.
Yes. I actually have something to ask you along those exact lines, RAISY, which is, that's actually one of the things that even in Quake Live, when like, if people don't remember how Quake Live went, in the early years, ESL supported it. It was in IEM, so it was a big tournament still. It had like a lot of money and stuff. And in the later years, it was just like Dreamhack, or it was like Quake. It was like 1 or 2 events a year. And I can tell you most of the top pros, as far as I know, did that Cooler approach. Like if you remember, they used to basically for practice just play those like Sunday Cups, everyone, where it was like a stupid cup. And if you remember, half the time the joke was like Cypher would lose to like a random Russian player that wouldn't even be at QuakeCon, just in those cups, right? And as far as I know, they all tried this method sort of that you're describing, where because they're older and they've been playing esports for a long time, it's more like they go easy during the regular part of the season because there wasn't a league like Quake Pro League back then, obviously. But then when they know the land's coming, they all sort of like know how many weeks it takes them to like get back up to the good level and to peak when the land comes. So the question I have for you is, in Quake Champions, it doesn't seem like that's your approach, though. You seem like even in the random weeks, you're going hard in all the online. It seems like your styles, you're always trying to be at a top level. Is this accurate? Have you tried to sort of grind it out?
Yes, but at the same time, I am similar to this approach as well, just slightly differently. With this sandbagging approach, I can't confirm whether it was their mentality, their mindset, or whatever, but I feel like the reason I was grinding similarly to them at times, but I wasn't sandbagging. I was like try-harding at all times. But I feel like both methods have the same approach, which is you want to experience as many situations as possible in a match where no matter who you're playing against, both like player and character wise, you just want to get into as many situations as possible to see the outcomes of certain decisions, like which weapon you want to use in this scenario, or should you have used a different one?
Right.
Should you be aggressive in this situation, or should you back away from a fight? Like as many, you just want to grind through it as much as possible to get as much feedback as possible so that you can sort through it and see what the best options are, so that when it comes to the LAN event, by then you're prepared and you're not put into a random situation and then all of a sudden you have to make decisions. By then it's like pre-programmed and you're like on autopilot and just doing it, so to say, by feel, which is not really something like a at the moment decision. It's more like previous experiences are gonna nudge you towards the right directions with your like decision making and just like how to approach certain scenarios, you know. And both methods, like the sandbagging and the tryharding, both are basically about this. I feel like, at least in my experience, the way I did it is I was playing basically every tournament I could, and every tournament, like online tournament, throughout the practice period before a big event. I mean, I participated in as many, if not all, tournaments I could, and I always tried to win them. And the way I did that was by tryharding throughout the whole thing, and always trying to do the right move. Never be careless. No matter who my opponent was, I was taking it seriously, and I tried to get the upper hand. And because I played against all kinds of skill sets throughout the week and all kinds of people, and because it was like a weekly thing, I was grinding it day in, day out, I got so much feedback and I could learn from it so much that it helped a lot when it comes to like a big LAN event where I had to make a very important decision. And when I got into that situation, I was already familiar with that situation because it has already happened so many times before that. And I could tell what would happen if I did this or did that or did that. And then out of those options, I just was familiar with the outcome of which one would be the best for me to do when I was already at the LAN event. And I feel like what QPL was doing with the sandbagging was very similar. It might not have looked like it. It might have just looked like as if he just grinds the game for the fuck of it, so to say, just so that he has the hours in. But I feel like in reality, he was actually constantly getting feedback and learning from it.
Right. Yeah, if people don't understand what he's sort of saying there is obviously a difference between old versions of Quake is all you're really learning in the old version of Quake is how does the player play and what is the map like. Whereas obviously in this case, because of the meta changing, you have to know like every matchup and you have to know, like you're saying, like it's actually useful to practice being out of control on a champion you don't use that often in a matchup you don't know because you get sort of the experience. Yeah, that makes sense actually. I can see the logic of that. All right, what about this question? So one of the things that I notice is obviously the middle part of this Quake run was obviously when we had to go on the internet and there wasn't any lands for an obvious reason that everyone remembers, right? Here's what's weird. Bearing in mind all those people hated on you, like you're an onliner, they would think this would make it easier to play online. But I actually have a question for you, RAISY. It goes like this. I know from Counter-Strike when we had the year and a half of the online tournaments, I know loads of top players who during that period, their numbers went down, their team went down. And I actually knew from talking to them, they'll definitely be way better when LANs come back. Because they told me half the problem actually was that you were just at home. They said the thing that they couldn't handle was, they said as much as you might hate like travel and how annoying it is, you know, check into the event and then what time's our match. Like the thing is, you're used to that environment though, and because it's a different environment, it means you know, like this is the match or this is the final or something. They said the worst feeling was like when you play like a final of an event. So you were playing at the World Championship final because it's online. You're still just in your bedroom. It's still the same place you were yesterday. When you lose, by the way, there's no after party. You just turn the game off and you just sit in your bedroom. So they said it basically, as weird as it sounds, all the things outside of the game, it turns out did matter to the experience. It kind of like tells your brain this is a pro match. Like this is the bigger. Was it harder to compete in the online era in this sense for you? Did it get to you a bit?
I have mixed feelings about this because I always preferred playing on LAN because it was like the full experience. Like that's where you have to step up. That's like the real trial, when you have to go through a LAN event and do as well as you can. Whereas online, it just never felt like the same. It was just never felt as important to do well online, because even if it's the same event, it felt empty, hollow. But at the same time, it was still something you needed to do really well in. So it was just a weird feeling. But when it comes to online play, I really disliked having to play online when it was cross region.
Oh, sure.
The pings are a big factor when you
Yes.
play online. For those of the viewers who are not as familiar with it, but like when you're playing on LAN, the feedback of the game, like what happens when you're like moving around and shooting, is instantaneous. Whereas if you're playing online, first your computer, your internet has to register the input, like, oh, I want to shoot now. And then the computer is like registering it, and then the internet sends it to the server, and then whatever else decision it makes and happens, and then all of a sudden, by the time you actually shoot compared to when you press the button, some small amount of time has passed, but that small amount of time can be very, very crucial, especially in a very fast action packed game such as
Sure.
Quake. Like, for example, very many situations depend on the initiative, like how you approach a situation. If you rail your opponent before going full into a fight with LG or rockets, that rail damage basically decides the outcome of that fight. And because we had to play online, and very often I had to play. I am playing from EU, and I had to play against NA players, for example. The pings were bad. Like, one of us had okay ping, the other one had high ping, or the other way around based on which map we are playing. And very often on my screen, I was already behind the cover,
Right.
and I shouldn't have been shot. But because of pings, he sees on his screen that I'm still not behind the cover, so he shoots at me, and the server is like, yeah, well, fair enough, on his screen I wasn't behind cover, so it must have been a
Yes.
hit. So it registers the hit, and I get hit behind cover, and there's nothing I can do about it,
Yes.
because on my screen I was way behind the wall for like half a second now, and I still get hit. And that rail damage makes all the difference in the upcoming fight. It can decide the control or even get a frag out of it, and ultimately it can decide the fate of the match. So that was a very, very annoying period of time when we had to play and compete online on a professional level, because very often when it comes to like the big events, it was cross-region, and there was no way to avoid it.
Yes.
And some of us were playing from Argentina or Brazil or Canada or Russia, and so we had to make up for it and get like a so to say fair server. But the fair server still meant that players had high pings, and these scenarios where something unfair happened was like a regular thing, and there was nothing you could do about it. And
Yes.
it made all the difference when it comes to results, especially if it was like a best of one or a single elimination or something like that. So I never liked it. But at the same time, I still really enjoyed playing from home because it was comfortable, it was convenient.
Okay.
I had my setup. I didn't have to touch it. I didn't have to match after match pack up my things, wait until it's my turn again, sit down again, set up again, make sure that my settings are okay, stuff like that. So it was convenient and it was comfortable to play from home for certain reasons, but at the same time, it was also like a headache to go through it sometimes, depending on the matchup. And I always prefer the LAN environment because that's where it really is like has the most volume that you're playing competitively. And also there is a crowd, and it's just it's a feeling. It's like if you have ever competed, you know what I mean. If you never competed, you won't know what I mean until you experience it.
When in 2020, so it was one of the online years, you played the World Championship final against Rapha. I have a question. It goes like this, Raisy. If someone goes, this is where I always tell people, because the joke is people tell me that like I'm like fucking Wikipedia, because that was like my skill back in the day. Before there was Wikipedia, the joke is I was the one who just could remember all the stuff. But what people don't get is actually just remembering who won a match doesn't really tell you much about the match. Like if people go and watch and look on a Wikipedia, right, they're going to see like, Rapha won 4-0 and look, he's dominated all these maps. Like first of all, one, he was in the upper bracket, so you got one map already. That doesn't even count. Then the other games, look at the final score, Raisy, like he blows you out. I went back and watched this final before I did this interview because I was thinking, I'm sure it wasn't that one-sided. Dude, it isn't one-sided at all. Like you're in nearly all these games. Like you're either ahead in a game or there's a moment where it's like even, and it's just like Rapha just always comes on strong at the end of the map or on the latter half of the map. What do you think of this final? Like on paper, it looks like he blew you out. This looked like it was actually like quite competitive.
I honestly cannot even remember.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
2020, I played against Rapha. Really?
Yeah.
Wait,
this was the one where
was it not on LAN?
No, this was online, I'm pretty sure. Wasn't it? 2020?
You're not going to narrow it down if you say I come from the lower bracket, because that's always been the case.
No, this was the one where I think you lost to maybe vengeuR in the upper bracket, but it was when the European side. I think that was what happened on that one. Okay, fair enough.
Who won the whole thing? Was it Rapha?
Yeah, Rapha won in the final. Yeah. World Championship 2020. You can look it up if you want.
Yeah, I'm trying to because I can't remember it. 2020. Oh yeah, there was a thing like that. Well, I can't remember how it went down. Unfortunately, I would love to answer you. But yeah, very many times people don't think about, like you said, like all they see is the result. And they don't think about how it actually went down. And I know for a fact that most of the time when I play the grand final, I made it close. I gave it my all. And sometimes it was like one map difference. And that map difference was because of me coming from the lower bracket. So we both won 3 maps in a best of 7. But he had an additional point because he was coming from the upper bracket and stuff like that. That has happened a few times. It has happened against Rapha. It has happened against Gilsen. But
by the way,
always try to make it close.
Don't worry if you don't remember the specific matches. Obviously, you played a lot of finals, a lot of matches. But I'll have a similar question then. So obviously, the next year when it was also online and you played the final against your current teammate, vengeuR, who's obviously a mate of yours, right? Here's what I have the question here is I feel like I have maybe an angle no one's got, which is because I actually have known a lot of the top Quake players. So back in Quake Live, people might remember there was a similar situation. Avec and Cypher were always in the same team. This is obviously back before Cypher was in Navi. They used to be in that like I think it was called Serious Gaming or something like Dutch team, and they were always in the same squads together. And so as a result, they were also like friends and practice partners. And it meant that even if at the time of whatever year we're talking about, even if at the time, say, Cypher was the #1 player in the world, if they ever played each other in a tournament though, RAISY, like in the semis or the final, this was the one match you could never predict because since they're practice partners, they didn't play like they did against everyone else. In fact, what they used to do, and I've even heard they did this for real, is apparently because they didn't want to make it like beef between them. Apparently they did sometimes just sort of say like, secretly, maybe we split the prize money and just play and say fuck it and just have like a fun game basically. And what it meant though is if you ever go and watch some of these games back in the day, even if Avec wasn't in that great form, he'd always do awesome against Cypher because it looked like they just sort of played it was almost like a practice game or exhibition game. And it made the games amazing though because they'd just be going all out basically because like I say, it doesn't matter who wins, right? When you had this final against vengeuR, even though he won, I almost had like a vibe like that because this game's a fucking banger. If no one's ever seen this one, this is a really epic fucking final. And it's like everyone's going ham. And by the way, he plays out of his mind on this one. Like, I don't want to be like, it's okay to lose, but mate, I don't think he's ever hit that hard ever in his life. That was insane how he played in that match. What do you think of, do you remember this final? Surely this one you remember.
Like I said before, it always felt like when I was losing in these grand finals that my opponent was like just stepping up, like playing out of their minds. And it felt like that against vengeuR that time as well, because I wouldn't say he was an underdog, because he was by then already a very good professional level player. But I think I had like a bigger chance of winning against him if we are not taking into account the fact that I was coming from the lower bracket.
Yes.
But yeah, he played out of his mind, and also at the time, there were one or two champions I never really played because they didn't suit my play style, and I felt like it's better if I focus on the rest of the game instead of trying to learn them on an okay level, because I'll never be as good as the others. Instead, I'll just try to perfect the other characters. And so he played against me with one of the characters that I was not good at, which meant that on a map where that character was one of the best, he was already kind of in an advantage when it comes to like mobility. Because I'm talking about Slash on Molten, and Slash is a very fast character, one of the fastest characters in the game. But at the time, I wasn't very comfortable with her movement style, which is crouch sliding. And whoever played Quake 4 is familiar with it, but I never played Quake 4. Yes. And I never mastered that style in Quake Champions either up until that point. And then by now I am familiar with it and I am actually comfortable playing that character. But at the time I was very bad at it and I never really tried. I was just letting go of it basically. But me letting go of that character, and everyone knew that about me, kind of gave him the upper hand before the map even started, because it allowed him to comfortably pick whatever he wanted and ban whatever he wanted, because he knew that I'm never gonna pick that character and it's gonna be his if he wants it. So I played against him with a character that has no mobility. I was a very slow character with a high DPS possibility. I played BJ, and he can dual wield weapons when he's using his ability. But because vengeuR played so carefully and so fast, it was very hard to catch him out off guard and use my ability efficiently against him. And every time I just felt like I wasted it and he could just run away. And as soon as he had like a comfortable 1-2 frag lead against me, he was just on the run and I could never catch up to him. And basically he just played the time, which is people would say it's a cowardly move, but it's not. It's the smart and safe play to do, and I will never take it away from him. Like you only won because you played like a coward. No, he played the right way and he deserved it, and I'm okay with that. And back to your question, I actually really despised playing against vengeuR. He was, I think, the only EU player that I never wanted to practice or play against in under any circumstances, because I was just very uncomfortable playing against him. I loved him as a person, and to this day we are very good friends, we are teammates, we are rivals, and it's kind of a love-hate relationship. I always pick on him. He's from Italy, so I make jokes about spaghetti and ketchup and stuff like that and get on his nerves. It's funny. And I woke him up at QuakeCon one time by sending him a picture of pineapple pizza. Stuff like that. It's just funny. Yeah, good banter. It's just but in reality, we are very good friends, and we love each other.
But you're not. Obviously, people would assume you guys practice all day. You're not practice partners. You don't practice that much.
People would assume that we do, but we never do. He's the one player I never play against.
Right.
Unless it's like a tournament where we have to. We just avoided each other, basically. He didn't really ask me to play against him. I never wanted to play against him. I just felt like he would get on my nerves. I never felt comfortable playing against him. He had such a game style that to me was frustrating to play against, and so I just avoided it, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best and most professional way of doing it, but I just couldn't do better. I just felt like I would just go crazy and rage and would get angry, and I just wanted to avoid all that. I'm generally a kind of calm and cool level-headed guy. Level-headed. Yes, that's the word. But sometimes things do get to me, and vengeuR had a way of making that happen. So yeah, contrary to the Avex Cypher situation, vengeuR and I never played against each other, never practiced outside of when we actually had to play in tournaments. But I was very familiar with the way he played, and he of course knew how I played. But yeah, during that match, during that final, he just played out of his mind, and I expected him to do that, but I just couldn't do anything about it to prevent it.
When it came to the next year, the one where you played Kilson, this is also like, this is one of the ones, by the way, there's some of them where it's like you just lost. This is another one which is just an amazing match, mate. Like, Kilson's obviously a really great player too. I think both of you like have an interesting back and forth in your careers. This final was just amazing, I thought. It was just a great final. Sorry you lost it, but it was a great final.
It was a great final. And I remember this one detail. I lost to Kilson in the upper bracket as well. That's how I got into the lower bracket. And the way I lost the upper bracket match against him is that he won the very last situation and survived with 1 health point.
Right.
And that made all the difference, because if he had died in that situation, I would have been the one to go into the grand final from the upper bracket.
Yes.
I would have had the map advantage, because this grand final ended up being a 4-3 in his favor because of the map advantage. We both won 3 maps each, and if it had been me from the upper bracket, I would have won the whole thing. But that 1 health point decided who goes down to the lower bracket, and it was me. And so he had the advantage, and in the end, he won 4-3.
What is Kilson so strong at? Like, I mean, it feels like the obvious thing is obviously mechanically he's very good, but like, what is he so good at?
Railgun and patience. We have like kind of a, I wouldn't necessarily call it an inside joke, but it's just like everyone knows it in the pro scene, is that Kilson is like a sentry gun. You just put him down on the map somewhere, most likely somewhere in the middle. You give him a railgun, and you just wait and profit, basically. Because he's gonna hit his shots. He's patient. He doesn't necessarily go for control. He just waits for you to go into his crosshair, and he's gonna make sure to punish you for that. And that's not all he does, of course.
No, sure.
But he does that very well. Yes. He knows when to put up a stop sign and when to hit those rails, and he's very good at hitting them.
By the way, when you say that, give me like the contrast, because here's the question I would have. If I asked a random fan of Quake Champions, they're going to tell me RAISY has fucking sick game. You do. You have really good mechanics. Your whole game's really good. Like, the difference is, I know what you're talking about, because if anyone watches a match where someone's playing and Kilson does really well, if you watch the opponent's POV, even when they're in control, it feels like, are they actually the one winning this game? Because if they just come around the corner, like a rail just hits them out of nowhere, and then the guy's gone, and you're like, how are you supposed to play against that? Like, you know this from Counter-Strike. In Counter-Strike, we have a thing we do for the best players, where sometimes people make, just to show how good they are, a frag movie, but from the reverse POV. Like, it shows all the opponents getting killed, and obviously what you see is like someone like Nico or Simple. You don't even see them on the screen, mate. They're just like their elbow peaks, and then you're dead instantly. Like, it looks like it's really frustrating to play against Kilson. Like, it's a nightmare when you have to go into a rail. Like, you want to make him come to you, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to know when to try to do something about it. Like, first you have to, of course, be stacked enough. You have to have the right weapons. You must not give away your position so you can jump on him. But he just doesn't allow you to. Like, he will know where you're going, and based on that, he can tell what kind of weapon you have available, which ones you've picked up, which ones you haven't gone for yet, so that you can set up a trap in case you want to. He's gonna know that you've picked up like a mega because he allowed you to. If he sits at the middle of the map and he will hear which way you're going, he's gonna know the timings, he's gonna know your stack, he's gonna know your weapons, and he's gonna be the one to set up the trap. And he hasn't made any noise, so you don't even know that he's there, and he has all this knowledge. So it's really hard to do anything about it. But if you do know that he plays like that, you can kind of come up with a plan to surprise him and do something he wouldn't expect. Like, he would expect you to go for, let's say, mega when it's up, but instead you go for killing him. And that would be something that surprises him and catches him off guard, and that can give you the opportunity to kill him. But it's really hard to do so, because on pro level, surprising someone is hard to do, because everyone has so much experience that they just expect everything, basically. And no matter what you do, they are ready for it. And so Kilson is really good at controlling you, not the map.
Right. Obviously, we alluded to it earlier, but in the most recent championship, it was rapha again. And then this time, look, this one was one of the ones that wasn't that great. Like I said, basically the joke is, aside from the clutch game, there's not really much to talk about, right? It was kind of a bad final for you. What was your actual form going into this tournament? Like, did you think you could like get back and win the tournament? Did it feel like you were in good form before you played rapha? What was it like?
I have to admit I wasn't in my best shape. I'm not trying to make excuses or anything, but I had some stuff going on in real life, and so I just didn't have the time and the energy to put as much effort into preparing to that tournament as I would have liked to otherwise. So I went into that tournament with nearly zero practice, apart from all the years I have played before.
Sure.
That prepared me to be a certain level. I was rusty is the easiest way to say it. So the first beginning matches, the first few matches I played in that event was basically my warm-up. And by the time I played rapha, I was in my best shape I could be in at the moment, considering the circumstances, but it was just not enough to beat him. But like contrary to other people, like everyone else was grinding. Well, at least very many other pros were grinding the game, putting so many hours and streaming and practicing, and just I felt like I'm way behind. Because originally I was the underdog when I first started playing in Quake Champions, but I put so much time and effort into it that I eventually somehow I became the favorite. But at this event, I felt again like an underdog, but in a way that people didn't know that I was an underdog. So it would be surprising for them to see me play so badly and to lose against opponents they wouldn't expect me to lose against. But in reality, I was very rusty. I was nowhere near in my best shape.
Right.
And even at the very end, by the time I warmed up, I couldn't do better. I still could have been a better player had I had the chance to properly prepare for the event. But again, I'm not making excuses. I have lost to rapha before when I was in my absolute best shape. So it wasn't because of that. But I maybe could have done better had the circumstances have been different.
Yes. I mean, basically, the way you describe it, this sounds like it was actually the one rare example of a Quake Championship where actually getting second was pretty good. Like, there's a world where you could have done much worse
in a way,
than this
yes.
one, right? Yeah.
In a way, but after being second so many times...
Of course, yes.
It wasn't comforting enough to be second.
By the way, I
should have been happy.
I have a good question on that topic because, again, I've just known so many pros. I've known people who've been through this very rare situation that you're in now. And here's another thing that I feel like a casual fan never understands about that sort of player. They make it sound as though, like, once you get to a level, you just permanently stay there. So they make it sound like, you came second and second. It's like, no. The reason why it's amazing is because if you go and look at all these finals, like, it isn't like rapha's in every one of these. Some of them, he's just not even there. Kilson might win one, but then the next two, he might just not be present. It's actually really hard when you lose to get motivated to go all the way back again to a final. And like, you have to keep your level up. You have to still adapt. You have to play as though you'd won. You still have to change up your tactics and your champion and what pool you've got. Like, I don't think people realize just because you didn't win doesn't mean that, like, it's not like you start in the next final. You have to get all the way back to the next final. Like, the mental actual fortitude to keep coming back. I know a lot of players, RAISY, where if they've been in a few finals, sometimes it breaks them forever, mate, and they never get to a final again. Like, it just crushes their spirit. Like, how do you have something about you as a person? How do you get back on the horse, as it were, as we say in English? How do you get back up after a loss and then go to the next final? Like, it must take a lot of fortitude in its own way.
I guess I have the experience from CS times to just always stand back up no matter what. I don't know. It's hard. It's really difficult. I don't know how I did it. I guess I just really wanted to make it happen that I win eventually. So even though I didn't the last time, I was like, let's try again. I have to try again. I want to do it. I want to become first. I want to win things. So every time I just somehow stood back up again, no matter how difficult it was to swallow previous losses and fails and failures. I don't know. I just kept trying, and I still keep trying to this day. I think there was something I wanted to say regarding what you were talking about, but I just kind of
Maybe about
forgot
the
it.
idea of like being able to like return to the top again and how hard it is each time.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
part I feel
exactly.
people take
Now
for
I
granted,
remember.
right?
Now I remember. I want to make a don't know what the word is, similarity, I guess, like a comparison. I feel like playing professionally is similar to going to the gym in a sense of if you don't do it for a while, you're going to lose your muscles. It's not
Right.
like once you gain them,
Yes.
you're going to have them for the rest of your life. You have to maintain it.
Yes.
And it's similar in that regard that just because in one tournament you did really well, it's not gonna guarantee that your shape, your form is gonna be just as good for the next one if you don't touch the game.
Yes.
Of course, you're gonna have a background, you're gonna have like past experiences, and you're gonna be familiar with the game, and you'll have your mechanics, but they're just gonna be rusty. But you're still gonna have to keep playing actively to refresh your memory, your mindset about how certain scenarios play out, how you want to approach the whole game, the match, what characters you want to pick, which maps you want to play. You have to remember the map layouts, and I'm not just talking about item placement, but also like peeking around corners, pre-firing angles, being ready for traps. And one of the very important things that I don't think many pros even think about actually is remembering ammo boxes. Very often people run out of ammo during a fight, or they don't have enough to go into
sure.
one. And yeah, you have to memorize where the armors are and the weapons are and like the hourglasses to refresh your ability cooldown and stuff like that. But also ammo boxes, they are very minor when it comes to the whole picture of the thing, but they do definitely play a part. And I feel like I'm one of the few players that are paying attention to that, and that's why I never really run out of ammo. And very often when I was streaming, there was a period of time when I was streaming when I played with an eye tracker to show people where I'm looking at on the screen as I'm playing competitively or whatnot, and so they could see like, oh, he's checking the time now, so he must be timing this item, and then now he looks at his stack, so he's considering whether he should go aggressive or not, and now he's looking at his weapons and ammunition. Why does he keep looking at his
Right.
ammunition, like stuff like that? Like people didn't really get why it's such an important part of the game, but it is. And it is a minor thing. Ammo box is like, who cares?
Sure.
I'll just pick up the weapon, or I'll kill my opponent and pick up what he drops, and I'll refresh my ammo that way. But if you pay attention, especially with the most important weapons, the Unholy Trinity, Rocket, Lightning, and Rail, if you just maintain your ammunition at all times throughout the match, you can always go aggressive. And sometimes an opportunity just, happens. And if you're not ready to take advantage of it, you missed out on a frag potentially. That could have been like the deciding thing for the match.
By the way, one thing I do actually hate about, because we're talking about your whole career, is the idea that if people have heard some of the stories, it's going to sound like we're just making you sound like you lose all the time. Like, obviously, you win most of the matches, then you get to the final and lose. So I want to also big up the fact that you are really good at Quake, because the question I have is this. One thing you're describing here is, one thing I think people have to give you really good credit for, is one of the reasons I think you've been back to the top again and again and again. It's like I said at the beginning, you've been one of the players who has adapted. Like, the small details you're talking about right now, that's how you get back to the top again year after year, right? Like I'm saying, you're not just waiting for your champion to be meta and then you have a chance. Like you've had to work on every aspect. Like as you said, if we looked at RAISY in 2018, you're a different dueler now. Like you've leveled up certain aspects. Like it's clearly your strategic game got better, your timing things. Maybe you don't play as impulsively. I don't know, but it seems like you certainly tried to sort of, as we say in English, like polish off all the rough edges. It seems like you put a lot of effort into refining your game.
Yes. Also, the meta always changes. So RAISY from 2018 might also seem different, not just because I evolved as a player, but also because back then the game was played differently on pro level, because different characters, different abilities,
Sure.
different strengths when it comes to how much the LG was dealing, like how much damage the LG was dealing and stuff like that. Like all those aspects changed, and we had to adapt as pro players. And yeah, maybe back then I wasn't as experienced as I am now, but at the same time, the game was different. So you had to play it differently to be efficient at it. Whereas now, maybe some of the things that you had to do back then to win situations, now those are like bad things to do, bad decisions. So maybe like the game looks maybe slower now, or maybe faster, or just different in general. But that's not necessarily because I changed my game style, but also because the game changed as well. How you play it to be efficient at it.
Right, I've got a question, and I'm going to ask it in a fucked up way, but
Okay.
that's just the nature of the question. There's no polite way to ask this question. So it goes like this, RAISY. If I had a magic wand and all I wished was this one wish, which is, even though it's impossible because obviously there's two people in a final, but just go with the premise. If you make a final, you get that championship, right? If I just did that to everyone's career in Quake Champions, well, obviously the joke is you would actually be the GOAT of Quake Champions. You would have like all the world championships. You would like, look, Rapha's got quite a lot. Like obviously right now everyone says he's the GOAT. He's got an amazing resume. He is a champion many times. But like what's fucked up is you're still waiting for the first world championship. But actually like aside from the finals days, people could argue you're the best Quake Champions player. I mean, from the beginning to the end. Rapha comes along and he has his loop, and then there's other people have their years. What would you say to this? Because it must be one of the hardest parts, right? On the one hand, people are acting like you're not a champion because you didn't win world championship, but some could argue maybe you are the best Quake Champions player over the whole history of the game.
I would like to think. I'm not sure if it is actually like that when you look at statistics. It just feels like that. But I would like to say that I'm probably the most consistent top tier player for Quake. You know, I never really won world championships, but I have won smaller events every now and then, and online tournaments, and like when that are like organized on a weekly basis. Very often I won. So I have like a good career behind me. Like I have very good results, and overall I am very consistent. I might not be the most popular name in the world of Quake. Like obviously you said, if we have to name a GOAT, most people would say rapha, and they would be mostly correct because he won the most things, but he is not the most consistent. Because when he wins, but he doesn't always win. And when he doesn't win, he's not second, he's not third. He might be like 7 to 8 or 9 to 16th or whatever. Whereas I don't win, but I'm consistently at the top, you know, and it's like a bittersweet feeling.
Of course. By the way, is there something that you would actually pinpoint? Do you have something about you that you think has allowed you to be more consistent, whereas some other players have the ups and downs? What do you think? What's your secret, would you say?
Oh, that's a hard question. I don't know. I guess my better safe than sorry mentality definitely helped me out throughout my career. Apart from that, I am also very stubborn in a way that once I get something in my head, I just don't want to stop. I refuse to give in until I succeed. Like a good example would be when I surf in CS and I complete a map and I know that I can do better, like a faster time. I won't stop until I succeed and I manage to complete the map within that time limit. And then I put myself another goal and I'm like, I need to be able to do this. You know, I won't give in until I succeed. And sometimes I remember I had those streams where I was streaming for up to 5 hours plus on a single map, just over and over until I managed to beat that record that I had in mind. And that mindset is everywhere with me. When I compete or whatever else I do, I'm way too stubborn. And sometimes it's actually not a good thing because I don't know if you know it, but I have started speedrunning Quake 3 Arena like a year and a half ago, something like that. I managed to beat the whole game in one go without dying once on the hardest difficulty, which has never been done before.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
And then I also started speedrunning the category where you are allowed to die, but you just need to be fast on the hardest difficulty, which is like a different kind of difficult. And I have been doing really well in that regard in speedrunning. But my point is, my stubbornness when it comes to speedrunning sometimes is like really frustrating because I know I can do it and I know it will happen eventually. It hasn't happened yet, but I refuse to give in, and I'm going to continue until I manage to succeed. And sometimes I go into 9-hour sessions of streaming and just doing the same thing and resetting and trying again and doing it. And And I remember my personal best, which at the time was the world record. That was the first ever time when someone completed Quake 3 Arena on the hardest difficulty within half an hour. That was like a big thing. Like, maybe it doesn't say much to most people, but it was really difficult to do. And I was the first one to do it. Since then, it has been beaten. But my point is, by the time I finally managed to do that, it was a 9-hour long stream. And that was the attempt. After 9 hours of continuously trying, I had that attempt that finally managed to succeed. And if you watch back that video, you can look it up on YouTube. It's uploaded there. I looked dead because I had the webcam on, and I didn't look like I was happy. I was just relieved that it's finally over. I didn't even care that I did what I did, which was actually a big thing.
Sure.
I was just glad that finally it's over. I can go rest now. So yeah, sometimes my determination and stubbornness is hard. It's just difficult. If you can't stop even when it's not healthy anymore, it's bad. But at the same time, sometimes good things come out of it.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure that's where like being able to grind the game comes from. By the way, one other thing I want to ask, which is normally I'm not the guy who asks like all the like personal stuff, what's your family like, well, that. But one thing I do wonder about is I know another problem for pro players in esports is most people's families don't like, obviously a lot of them don't play or watch the game, so they don't really understand what the person does. They might know like, oh, he goes to tournaments and he's really good, or they hear like, oh, he's third in the world or whatever. So the problem I imagine is, I don't know in your case if they actually understand Quake, if they watch the finals, but every time you come back from one of these World Championships, I'm sure the problem is everyone's going like, so what happened this time? Why didn't you win this one? Does that happen? Do the people back home ask those questions?
My whole family always supported me with my career decisions, even back in CS times when I was not even making any profit.
Right.
If anything, I was putting a lot of time, effort, and money in without anything in return. But they've always supported me. They have been following me throughout the years. They have been watching my matches. They've been cheering for me. They were always happy whenever I succeeded.
Right.
And when my Quake career started, and I finally started making a living out of doing what I love, they were really happy for me. And it's difficult for them. Like, I'm talking about my parents at the moment. It's difficult for them to follow Quake, because it's a fast-paced game and hard to see what's happening, like properly understand what's happening. And sometimes my mom is like asking me, like, you have him in your crosshair, why are you not shooting? And then I have to explain it to her that the railgun has a cooldown between shots.
Right.
And he's on my screen, but the weapon is not ready to be fired just yet. But yeah, they've been always supportive of me, luckily.
By the way, being as you played so many finals and big matches in Quake Champions against Rapha, I do have some questions because, as I say, I've sort of gotten to know some of his side of how he thinks about matches. And one thing, like I alluded to, that I think Rapha, the funny thing is, if I actually had to say what I think his biggest strength in all Quake players is, it is just mind games. It's that he's somehow amazing at, like you were describing before, he makes the opponent, it's because they also know he's really smart and he's good at game planning. It's like he makes the opponent second guess what they think is the right move. And so many people have told me that's what fucks you up. It's not even just always that he did a great move or you did the wrong move. It's that because it seems like he's reading you, or sometimes he comes in with a great initial game plan, it just makes you start like thinking, oh, should I do that? Or maybe I shouldn't. Or wait, maybe I should set up like a super complicated trap, and then you get in your own head and it fucks you up. Do you know what I mean by this?
Yeah, of course. I've experienced it many times. I feel like I'm dumb for giving this away, but I know that the best thing to do against Rapha is to just be dumb and play like you're stupid. Of course, you're gonna have your skill set, but just make moves, do things he wouldn't expect. Because if you play the right way, it's not gonna work against him. Because he's gonna expect it. He already has a counter for it. He's waiting for you to make that move, and he's gonna be happy that you make that move. But if you do something stupid, unexpected, it's more likely gonna work against him, because he's gonna be like, "Why the hell are you there? Why are you doing this? That's such a stupid move. It should never work." But it will, in this rare instance. Sometimes the best thing to do against the best players is to make the worst move.
Right. Yes. It's counterintuitive, but I know what you mean. Another thing I would ask you is this, actually, which is, even though I can tell you, by the way, Rapha definitely does not agree with this statement. In fact, he hates it. I've even said to him, the thing I find very impressive about him is, I've never thought he ever had the best mechanics, mate. Like, he has good mechanics, but the difference is, I was always telling him, yeah, but bro, there's like Cypher and fucking Avek, and like, you know, like these players with certain weapons are just the best. Like, they're impossibly good. So my question to you would be this as well. I've also noticed another thing that looks very frustrating is, if you ever watch a Rapha game, it never looks like aim's even a factor in the game. Somehow, like, it's not like he's having these crazy pop. It's like he never needs to, though. He just always looks like he can set it up so he can hit an easy rail or an easy rocket shot, or he can get away. What would you say to this aspect? 'Cause I often feel like people think Quake is just aim, but like, if it was just aim, I don't think Rapha would be the million times champion. So it shows to me that you can neutralize aim in this game, right?
A very big thing that is different between Rapha and most other pros are, most pros react to what happens and they respond to whatever happens, instead of what Rapha does, which is he expects it and prepared for it, and he doesn't necessarily react, he initiates things. So it's not like a sudden thing that he has to first process and then come up with a decision and then execute it. He's already at the execution part before the whole thing begins. That's a big difference, because if you're ready for something, it's not gonna catch you off guard. And Rapha is playing like that, whereas many other pros are playing in a way that they have to make a flick shot with the rail because they didn't expect the opponent to be there. And yeah, they might be really good at flicking, and they are gonna hit the shot, and it's wow, what a shot! You know, everyone is gonna be like that. And then what Rapha does instead is that he's already aiming there. So when the guy shows up, he has to hit an easy rail because the guy just walks into his crosshair, and it doesn't look impressive at all. But that's what makes it so impressive, because he's constantly ready. He constantly knows what's happening around him on the map, and he's prepared. And that's why he's not playing in a flashy way, and that's why it may seem like his aim is not on point, but in reality, he is doing better than all the others that are like hitting all the flick shots and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, another thing as well I would also throw in is, I feel like you said it perfectly earlier, the other quality to him is it's that he just doesn't make mistakes. So I'll tell you another thing I know that he thought about a lot in his philosophy on Quake is, there's a lot of players do think of Quake as just like, right, when you're the one in control, that's when you're up the score and you win the game. So their whole thing's like, when I'm back in control. But it means some of them play a little bit too aggressive sometimes when they're out of control, or too frivolously, or they give away easy kills. He seems like he is fucking unbelievable at making it really hard to even, like, say you're behind in a game and then you get control. It's really hard to get any kills off this fucking guy. He's also really good at sort of like positioning and setting up traps and stuff, right?
I'm pretty sure he has his own way of approaching the game, similarly to my mindset with the better safe than sorry. I'm pretty sure he also has something similar. Maybe not like something he can point out or put into words, but like a certain mindset that makes him play the way he does. Like you said, like he doesn't go overly aggressive, but he also takes the opportunities when he can go aggressive and make it be advantageous. So he's just like very familiar with the boundaries of the game, what is a good move to make and what is not. And then because he knows all of this, he's obviously going to choose the right moves to make. And that's why it looks like as if he's not making any mistakes. Of course, then there's his aim and his movement, like he's not getting stuck on the terrain and stuff like that. But like that is kind of like the easy part, like moving around on the map. Anyone can really do that once you get familiar with how the moving mechanics work in this game with all the champions, like the wall jumps, double jumps, crouch slide, air control, blah blah blah, all those things. Like once you get familiar with how those work and how you can utilize them to be fast moving around on the map, you're not really gonna make many mistakes regarding that aspect of the game, unless there is like a factor that makes you make the mistake, like the opponent shooting a rocket that bounces you in a weird way where it messes with your movement and stuff like that. Like, but if you are playing being ready for that rocket, you're going to avoid it, so it's not going to mess with your movement, so you're not going to mess up your movement, so it looks smooth and you're not making mistakes on that part. But that also is partially because you were ready to avoid anything that could mess with it, you know? And Rapha is playing like that. Like he is aware of what certain actions will have like consequences wise. And he just avoids the bad ones. That's it basically. He's just ready for what you throw at him, and he knows what to do to turn it in his favor.
One thing I feel like in 1v1 games like Quake or StarCraft or something that makes it also feel so much more personal as a game with the rivalries is obviously in a team game, even if I'm playing the same team I played last time, there's so many more variables. Obviously, like maybe my teammate has a great game, maybe one of their players has a when it's just 1v1, I notice a cool aspect that I've always found very compelling is when you're playing the same circle of people, like let's be real, for a Quake World Championship, there's probably about 5 people are going to be able to win this championship and you know who they are. You played them all before. You'll play them all again. A cool aspect is a variable becomes the personality of the opponent. Like you're not just prepping the map and the champion and your form. You also have to sort of do like we're talking about, like sort of learn the tendencies and the profile of this character. And if I get him in this situation, what will I do? It sounds like that sounds like there's a meta of the opponent as well in a way, right?
Yeah, I tried to get into this topic a little bit earlier on when I said that before the match starts, the match has already been ongoing. You know, once you figure out who you're going to have to play against, and then you do the map picks and bans, and then you have to do the champion picks and bans. Like throughout that process, you already know, depending on who you are going to play against, you know which maps they like, which maps they are strong on, which maps they don't really play, which maps are not favorable for them. So you're going to do your map picks and bans partially according to that, of course, considering your own strengths and weaknesses as well. And then the same, based on these picks and bans and who you're going to play against, you're going to do the champion picks and bans as well. So way before the match starts, you already go into playing that match against whoever with the mindset of thinking about how to approach them as an opponent and how to make it as favorable for you as possible before the map even begins. And so basically in the pro scene everyone knows everyone at this point, and everyone knows which maps they like and they don't like, and same with the characters. And similarly to playstyles, like how I explained Rapha's playstyle and how I explained Killsen's playstyle, for example, like everyone knows everything about everyone at this point, yes. Whereas in a team game, like you said, there are more variables, of course. I wouldn't necessarily say it's random. I would just say that the possibility of outcomes are wider, you know. So you have to take into consideration more things, more factors, basically. But yeah, you can still kind of figure out other teams as well in team games, and you can watch back demos and learn from them and see how they, like one particular team does approach like certain maps and executing tactics and what they prefer doing and who plays the op and where he plays the op usually and stuff like that. And it will vary from team to team, even on pro level. Everyone is going to do something a little bit differently, but you can kind of figure out like the majority of it. But yeah, in a 1v1, it's way different. Because less factors to take into consideration. But somehow I always preferred this because I felt like I was in control of what the outcome is going to be. Whereas in, let's say, 5v5, I depend on teammates.
Sure.
And even if I have a great game and I play my heart out, we can still lose if my teammates are having a bad day, or the other way around. I don't want to hinder my team and I don't want to be the one to be at the bottom of the scoreboard, which is kind of a motivation in one aspect, but also like demotivation if you're not doing well and you're trying but you still can't. So it's like it's difficult to play in a team, because you of course want to do well, you don't want to let your team down, and but also if they are having a bad day, then it feels like no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to win the match, and then you have to start making decisions that are like out of your comfort zone because you try to make up for your teammates' bad day, and you try to take extra risks, but that is gonna like maybe blow up in your face. There are gonna be times when they will work out and you're gonna be like the star of the match and everything like that, but because you like so tensely trying to make up for what's going on, sometimes you're gonna be willing to take extra weight, like put extra weight on your shoulders, and it's not always gonna be able to pay off. So it's difficult, but I always preferred being in control, so 1v1. But at the same time, it's one of the best feelings ever to win, to be victorious as a team and share that with your teammates.
Right. See, I was going to ask you, by the way, a fucked up question at the end, but it's worse because I was going to ask it like this. I was going to put the pressure and say, you'll be a world champion next time. But the problem is there isn't any fucking Quake Pro League anymore. So it's even, the reality is even more fucked up than my question. So where does that put you then, RAISY? Because obviously, like I say, the cool ending would be like, it's okay, you're going to get it this year and it's all going to make up for the past. But now we don't even know where Quake's going. Where are you at the moment? Where's your head at as to what being a pro in Quake is at the moment?
My head is all over the place at the moment. Obviously, Quake is very dear to me. And like I said before, I always wanted to, I was always wishing for it to become bigger, become more popular, become more liked, more played by people. I wanted it to thrive, and I want to continuously do this for many more years, like competing in Quake. But like you said, unfortunately, no Quake Pro League has been announced for this year. Actually, it has been cancelled for this year. And at the moment, we Quake players don't really know what's going to happen to Quake.
Yeah.
And sadly, it is not very popular nowadays. Battle Royale is kind of the thing lately for the past few years. And Arena FPS has been dying out since then, or well, before it even, but especially since then. So it's unfortunate for us. I don't really know what's going to happen. I still somehow wish for Quake to make a comeback, and I would love to keep doing it for many more years. But yeah, I am at the point where I kind of have to start considering different career choices.
I'm going to guess this leads into what you hinted at, right? Because I actually was going to ask this, RAISY. You made a tweet that was quite interesting because your tweet was sort of like, once all this news came out that Quake Pro League's cancelled, your tweet was sort of like, I'm just going to be grinding CS2 now or something, right? Is the implication you're going to try being in CS2 as a pro?
I would like to, I guess, if Quake dies out for real and there's nothing ever gonna be in Quake ever again, then yeah, my second choice would be to try CS again. And I have been grinding it since they released CS2, and I feel like I am playing on a very high level, but it is a team game, and I don't have any connections. No one even knows who I am, and I am probably not as good as you would need to be a pro at the moment because I have so many years of absence in
Sure.
CS, but I still feel like I have it in me. And I have been playing a lot of Face It. I don't know if that says a lot to you or not.
Yeah.
I have been grinding it, and I have reached 3,000 elo at one point. At the moment, I am below it by a little bit, but I am around 3,000, and I feel like that's already not too bad. But I would need a team around me, like teammates, to get any further. I feel like.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'll keep trying CS because at the moment there is nothing with Quake, unfortunately.
Sure. Makes sense.
And then I'll just keep playing CS for a little more and see maybe something happening in there. I'm kind of hoping for it. Would be nice to play CS competitively again, but I don't know. At the moment, I am like at ground zero. Is a saying, I think.
Right. At the end of this interview, do you have a final message? Is there someone you want to say hello or thank you to?
Well, first of all, thank you for this lovely talk. I really enjoyed it. And we talked about certain topics that I haven't even thought about for many years now. And it was nice to be nostalgic and discuss certain things. So thank you for that. Also, I would like to thank my parents, of course, because like I said, they have been supporting me throughout my careers. no matter what I was trying to do. I would also like to thank my org behind me, Myztro Gaming, because they have been the one to pick me up in Quake, and they have been behind me for many years now, supporting me. And yeah, that's it basically. Also all the sponsors, I guess I should mention.
Sure.
So Logitech and Twitch and Gamers Apparel for their sponsorship.
Kusanom. I've had to make a lot of tough choices in my career, but thanks to the support of my Patreon community, the Skrilluminati, I never have to make tough financial decisions. So this video and all the rest on my channel are kindly supported by Ahmed Haju, Frisky, Mac Pugnaccio Racula, Animosity, Jensen Gore, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it if you've ever heard before, and you'll hear it many times in the future. A special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerry Keys Minion. Do you want to ask a question in my video AMA? Do you want to be part of one of those long discussions where we talk about whatever you like in esports? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are going to be? Or maybe you want to suggest a topic for a future Thorin's Thoughts type video? Well, if any of these perks or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is today and join the Skrilluminati by joining the Patreon link in the description box below.